Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. This episode is brought to you in partnership with my friends over at Kona. Those of you that have been listening to the show for a long time know that I am a huge fan of the remote work movement. However, I also recognize it comes with some challenges. One of those challenges that plagues many remote teams is employee burnout or employee dissatisfaction with their jobs. This is really hard to monitor as a leader when your teammates are not sitting face to face with you in an office anymore. But that's what Kona was built to tackle, and they've done a phenomenal job. The co-founders over there are friends and people who have truly built something to help people and help remote workers more specifically. So I love what they're doing. It makes a huge impact for their customers, and I'm excited to partner with them here. You can find out more and get 15% off your team subscription by going to the link in the show notes and using the code CHASE at checkout. Feel free to ask me any questions. I highly recommend this product and am excited to hear what the About Abroad community thinks. Check out the link in the show notes and use the code CHASE at checkout to get 15% off your subscription. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the very first Q&A only episode of About Abroad. I'm really excited about this. I've been wanting to do it for a while. I get a lot of questions that come in through email, through the website, social media, and these questions are always really fun to get into. I always wish that I could respond to all of them, and I can't. But some of them are really interesting and pertinent to a lot of you out there considering a move abroad, a transition to nomad life, finding remote work, all of the above. So anyway, we're going to dive in. We put the call out there. We asked for people to send their questions in. We got more than we can actually get to in a single episode. So we'll probably do a couple of these, give it a shot, see what you guys think. Let me know, follow up. Let me know if you like this or not. And if you do, we'll do more of it. And if not, then we'll get back to the core of the show. So anyway, let's kick this one off with Dom in France. Dom says, you often talk about the future of work, and I kind of loosely relate this to remote work. But what exactly does the future of work mean from your perspective? Thanks. Love the show and am learning a lot. Keep it up. Thank you, Dom. That's an awesome first question. So for those of you that don't know, I host this show About Abroad, which is loosely based on global mobility, which relates to a lot of the things that we're talking about, moving abroad, becoming an expat, spending significant time outside your home country, and all the fun and practical things that go into making that work. But my day job is working as the head of remote at a company called Doist, which is a productivity company. We're a fully remote company. We were one of the original companies that adopted fully remote work long before the pandemic, actually, like 15 years ago. So we take fully remote work very seriously, and we want to be really, really good at it. And that's kind of like my job at the company as the head of remote, is to make us really, really good at remote work. The company's already really good at it. So in some ways, it's a very easy job. And in a lot of ways, it's very hard to elevate the way that you're doing remote work when you're already really good at it. So that's the challenge that I'm tasked with. But the future of work is this sort of like broader statement that we use a lot that refers to this movement from working in the Industrial Revolution way of working to what a lot of us would consider a more modern way of working. So if you could go back in history, there was like the agricultural revolution, we had the first industrial revolution, we had the second industrial revolution, and we're kind of having this remote revolution right now where people are getting access to the internet, they're getting access to the tools they need, and they're getting a lot more control over the way that they approach work. And what this is leading to from the standpoint of this show is the ability to work from anywhere, or to at least spend more time away from a physical location. And so I recently had the chance to join Chris Hurd, who is the CEO and founder of a company called First Base, another fully remote company. He's also like considered the top future of work influencer, but he kind of hates the term future of work. And I was recently joined him on his podcast and was hanging out with him at a conference in Ireland. And he was saying how he kind of hates this term, the future of work, because it's really about the future of life. And I totally agree with him on that. This is really, the future of work is kind of a misnomer. It's about the future of life. It's about offering access to options, availability, disassociating work and success and growth from a physical location, and saying you can succeed and grow and have a wonderful life and career from anywhere in the world. And so for me, that's what the future of work is all about. It's all about the access to opportunity. It's not just about being able to live a fun life abroad or nomad around with a backpack and go check off 100 countries. It's also about people in developing countries getting access to work. It's about people who are handicapped and can't get into a physical office very easily, giving them the opportunity to work and make a really good living, or people who live in rural or impoverished areas of your own home country, maybe in a very developed country, but perhaps they're not close to one of the major metropolitan areas, and giving them access to work. So there's a lot that goes into this on like an economical level, a societal level, all of that. And maybe down at the very bottom of that food chain is the ability to move abroad if you want to, or go travel if you want to. That's a lot of what we talk about on this show. And it's something that I'm very passionate about and love. But I've also seen, you guys have seen episodes where we focused on people where remote work really changed their life, and they were able to access, I can actually in some cases say it saved their life and gave them access to a new opportunity abroad. And so for me, that's what it's all about. There's a lot of different ways to define it, but I think we'll start to see this shift from future of work to future of life. But when you, and admittedly, it sounds a little bit corny, right? Like we probably need another phrase. Future of work has worked really nicely because it does kind of flow. But I think there's a lot of opportunity in this, and I'm excited about it for that reason. And one of those reasons, again, kind of further down the totem pole at this stage of my life, is the ability to choose where you want to live and enjoy a life abroad, and change countries if you choose to, or maybe even change cities or move closer to your family, whatever it may be. I just like the opportunity to choose where you want to call home, and all the opportunities that come along with that. So thank you, Dom. Awesome question. Next up, Rui in Vietnam says, I love the van life stories, especially since I'm planning to do my first European camper van experience in September. What advice would you give a first-time camper vanner in Europe, or just in general? Asking for a friend, winky face. Awesome question. So couple things that come to mind first. Go with functional over cute. There are a lot of really cute Instagram pictures out there that will make you think van life is amazing, because you're driving around in this sweet little VW camper van that glows in the light and just, looks perfect for all those followers that you have. But will leave you stranded on the side of a road, and wishing that you had just gone with something a bit more functional. So focus on what's under the hood, not what's on outside the hood. Make sure that it's comfortable. Make sure that if you're tall, you can stand up, or that if you like to cook, it has a good kitchen space. Make sure that the bed is comfortable, that the bathroom situation is up to your standards, and don't underestimate any of those things. You're going to spend a lot of time living and working in this place. So make sure that it kind of has all those things, and put the aesthetics last. That should be at the very bottom of your list. Otherwise, I promise you will regret your experience. Also, if you're going to be traveling in Europe, get the app Park4Night, 4 with the number. Park4Night is an amazing app. It shares with you, it crowdsources all the information all across Europe, showing you where you can park for free, where the campgrounds are, where you can find very specific things. Like I discovered that in France, there's like 3,000 vineyards all across France where you can go and sleep at the vineyard for free. The only quote unquote obligation is that you go to a wine tasting and perhaps buy a bottle of wine, which might cost you, €5 if you're really cheap. And so for €5, you could just wake up in a French vineyard, do a wine tasting, and buy a bottle of wine. It's a pretty good deal. But I discovered that through Park 4 Night. I've also parked all over Europe in many different countries for free. I found amazing campgrounds. You can read reviews. You can get the directions, coordinates, all that. So amazing app, highly recommended. And on the note of campgrounds, don't overlook campgrounds. It's very easy to say like, oh, I'm going to go park for free. I'm going to, just free camp. And that's great. Do that if that calls to you. But there's a lot to be said for the campgrounds for relatively cheap, sometimes 10, 15, 20, 25 euros. You'll get a place where you can take a hot shower, where you can go get dinner at an amazing restaurant. You can meet other travelers. You can park flat, which is a pretty nice thing when you're trying to sleep. You can plug up for electricity if you need that. So change out your water, all those things. So don't dismiss the campgrounds just because you're on a budget. Sometimes it's really worth it to spend that little bit of extra money and save yourself some headache. And I do that all the time. Finally, if you're going to go into a city, I would really recommend that you focus on getting a smaller van. People always want to go with the biggest possible. But if you're going to spend a lot of time in cities, something like small as like parking garages, for example, you can't go into parking garages with a tall van usually. So you've got to find street parking, which is really problematic, especially if you have a long van, because you won't find parallel street parking. So just keep that in mind. Like think about where you're going to be going. If you're in nature, it's one thing. If you're going to be going up and down big mountains, then you're going to want to make sure you're going to have a strong engine and that you're not driving a massive vehicle. And so just think through those things. And finally, just don't over glamorize it. It's fun. It's great for a little while. Some people can live in them. Some people can do months in them. But just don't over glamorize the situation and know when to back out. I'm at the point where I like a week, 2 weeks, maybe up to a month at the most. And really that's pushing it before it just becomes a little bit less fun than it is actually thoroughly enjoying it. So keep that in mind. Great question. Thank you, Rui. All right. We are swinging all the way over to Canada. Michael in Canada says, which countries do you think are quote unquote on the rise for nomads and expats? That is a really good question, Michael. I'm going to assume some things here. I'm going to assume on the rise means that places like Portugal, Thailand, Mexico, Costa Rica, I'm going to be missing plenty here. And I will say that is the downside with this question, because there is no right answer, right? Like there's 200 something countries out there. I'm going to say a few countries here, and I'm going to have a bunch of people writing in say, no, you missed this country. How could you say X over Y? And so there is no right answer here. Or how could you say that, this country is already above the rise? But anyway, I do think places like that, Portugal, Thailand, Mexico, Costa Rica, I'm probably missing some others, are kind of sort of already established as awesome expat nomad destinations. So let's think through some others that are becoming more popular, that you're hearing more people talk about. Just for simplicity's sake, let's focus in a little bit more on like slow mad to expat rather than just nomading, because I think you can like nomad anywhere now. Like I feel like there's countries where, that used to be sort of off limits, or maybe you need a lot of money to get there, or maybe you would be able to do it, but they don't have good internet access. Like a lot of the world is developed enough now to where people are nomading in most places. So there really is no wrong answer there. As soon as you get away from the super well-established places, then the world is your oyster. But if you want to like settle down somewhere, or you want to spend, a year or something like that in a specific place, a few places that come to mind. So I'm going to kind of go by like continent here, I think. Southeast Asia was the original like nomad hotspot. People were going to Bali, people were going to Thailand. And I continue to see people, flooding over to that part of the world, the cost of living, the natural beauty, the ease of entry. There's a lot to love there, and it's just getting more and more attractive, I think. But if we take out the Balis and the Thailands, I think the Philippines are a place on the rise. I see more and more people talking about spending time there. It's less touristy. It's cheaper than a lot of the places like Ubud and Bali, for example. Some people still complain a little bit about the internet capability or like power outages and stuff. So maybe there's still some work to do on some of the islands. But I think there's a lot of potential in the Philippines, and I definitely think that's a place on the rise. We also have an amazing episode about the Philippines from Deanna, from about 6 months back or so. So go find that one if you're interested in learning a bit more about the Philippines. Coming over to Europe, Croatia is no secret to anyone. People have been traveling there in droves. I just left Croatia, and Dubrovnik is like walking around Disney World. So some people might laugh at this one, but I think the reason I'm considering them in this regard is they have a really awesome digital nomad visa, and more countries are introducing digital nomad visas, but Croatia has really nailed it for that person that just wants to go there for a year. They also just entered the Schengen in Europe, so its ease of access is really, really good. And almost anyone with a bit of income coming in from outside could go and establish themselves in Croatia. Relatively lower cost of living for a lot of Europe. Beautiful weather, a lot of diversity, great infrastructure, and that ease of access because of the digital nomad visa makes it very, very attractive, I think, to a lot of people. So it's also one of those places where people still feel completely safe going to, right? Like it's well established enough where you don't have any fear. You don't have any hesitation. Like, okay, I can go to Costa Rica and I can live well and get everything that I want, but also just live this really nice lifestyle abroad. So I could see Costa Rica becoming even more of a destination in that regard. I think Albania, just to the south, is like right there in the same in the same conversation. Going over to the Americas, I mean, there's a lot of options here, but I think Brazil's big time on the rise. But I'm going to go with Colombia. I think again, their digital nomad visa is very accessible. It's very generous, and Colombia is a country that's just screams to people. When you talk to people about wanting to go spend time in South America and get a real genuine experience, but also get to meet other expats and have like a fun, vibrant lifestyle, but living in South America, Colombia is just one of those ones that continues to pop up. So again, I think all of these are already on the radar for a lot of people, maybe a bit off the radar still for some. Depends on where you are in your expat or nomad journey, but those are a couple that came to mind. So I hope that's helpful for you, Michael. Thank you for the question. All right, Nina in Portugal. I love living abroad and meeting other expats, but sometimes it feels like all we talk about are the upsides. Can you share the low point of your life abroad and how that impacted you? Great show. Thanks for shedding some light on everything about abroad. Thank you, Nina. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I even think that sometimes with this show that perhaps we go a little too heavy on the bright sides, and that's just because I just have fun talking with everyone about their experience, and I probably need to pull out a little bit more of but what's the downside? So great question. Thank you for asking it. I have two low points. One of them involves the van, and I believe we have another question that I'll get to later, which I'll have the opportunity to shed some light on that. So I'll share another one that's very personal and also was truly a low point, but it's the kind of thing that you need to consider if you're moving abroad. When my wife and I first moved abroad, we were living in South America. We went to Ecuador, and essentially her father passed away while we were abroad, and it was very traumatic, very sudden, not expected, and we were at a point with our visa to where we needed to do a visa renewal if we wanted to be able to come back in to Ecuador. And that was going to take some time. So we were working through the process, trying to do that on all of a sudden. I mean, we thought we had weeks to do it. We had a few days, and we weren't able to get the visa done in time. So that essentially meant that we would have to leave Ecuador and not be able to come right back in, or not leave. And like if we decided, okay, well, we'll leave and not come back. We couldn't really do that. We had our dog there with us, which needed to do lots of paperwork and tests and things like that. If we wanted to be able to leave, we had a business going there that we needed to keep running or shut down. I mean, there were just so many obstacles, such a short time frame. And so it was our first time experiencing, just a loss of life, but also being abroad and not being there with family, not having the support system around you or being there to support others. And that was very, very difficult. We had to attend the funeral virtually, which was also brutal. And it was a real wake-up call. I mean, you got caught up in the bureaucracy of the system and realized you were because you couldn't, sign a piece of paper in time or get something done quick enough for a government agent who didn't care at all about our experience. We were stuck, and it was really, really hard. And over the years, it's happened where we've missed lots of, other life events like that you just from small things like the graduation of a loved one or the first birthday of a best friend's child or anything along those lines up to something as bad as, losing a loved one. It's very, very challenging. And so that is something to really keep in mind. If you're okay taking that risk, you can always say, "Oh, I'll fly back." We always said that, and we do. We've done that for certain things, but in some cases, you just don't know what the circumstances are going to be. We one time during that same trip went, hiking, did a 5-day Machu Picchu hike where we had no cell phone service for 5 days. What if something had happened then? We would have been, it would have taken us minimum a week to get back. So some things are just out of your control and you do have to release control. And I think that's one of the life lessons that I've learned living abroad is we don't have quick access to everything that we want when we want it, as you do in your home country often, either because you don't know how to navigate the system or things are just out of your hands or things just don't work as fast as you'd like them to or you're used to. So being okay with that is important, and definitely worth spending some time getting real with yourself on whether or not you're okay with taking that risk. So yeah, good point, Nina. We gotta touch on some of the dark sides sometime to see the light, I think, and that's okay. So I'm glad you asked, and thank you for letting me share that with you all. We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. Hey guys, so many of you write in asking some form of the question, how can I become a digital nomad or location independent professional? And there are obviously a ton of ways to answer that question. I also don't have all the answers, which is why I'm so excited to be partnering up with my friends over at Noma. And they have created the Nomad Academy, which we are going to be launching here very soon. You can get access to the course with $250 off by using the link in the show notes and entering the code Chase250 at checkout. This is a course that's going to be taught by some of the leading digital nomads in the world. I can't wait to learn from them myself, and I'm also really excited to be teaching a course there. So if you want to join us, go to the link in the show notes, click on it, and then enter the code Chase250 at checkout and become that digital nomad and location independent professional that you have always aspired to be. If you've made it this far into the episode and you're still enjoying yourself, then I would love to ask a quick favor. Open up the app that you're using to listen to this podcast and leave a quick review. You can do this in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and really just about any platform that allows podcast listening now. If you can't find that in the interface of the app, then scroll down in the show notes and find ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, and you should be able to leave it from there. Thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate it and hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Stacy in the US. I am trying to transition from an in-office job to a remote role so I can make a move abroad, but I lack most of the skills necessary to get a truly remote job. What advice do you give to someone who is trying to make that transition, and are there any resources you can point me to? Stacy, you are speaking my language. I mean, not really, because I I love the question because you are resonating with so many people out there that feel exactly the same way. And that's for that reason. I'm really grateful that you asked the question. On the flip side of that, I want to beat this into your brain. You have skills. You have amazing skills. You can 100% take the experiences that you have had throughout your career and the rest of your life and transition them into the remote world. More than ever, this is at your disposal. More than ever. You're in the best time in the history of mankind to be able to do this. So keep that in mind. Have some confidence, first of all. Know that your life experiences are valuable and do transition to the quote unquote new way of working, and hone in on how you can accentuate those skills. More tactically, what I would say is focus on becoming an amazing writer. When you're communicating in a remote team, you're very much so going to be doing it in the written way. You hear remote teams talk about asynchronous communication a lot. That is writing in the written form quite a bit. So you could be an amazing orator. You could never have met a stranger. You could be awesome at expressing yourself on stage or in front of a group, but get really good at using those same skills, using those same words and thoughts and ideas and putting them on paper. That does not mean writing a lot. You have to balance between being very succinct but powerful with your words. So you want to get as much across with as few words as possible, because when everything on a remote team is happening via the written word, there's a lot of reading that needs to be done. So we really value bringing down the amount of reading that people have to do. It also helps to get some remote experience if you can. So do some freelancing if you can. Put yourself on Upwork. It's a great freelancing platform. Go take the virtual assistant digital nomad course by our friend Hannah. We did an episode with her a few months back, and just get some experience working remotely, just a little bit, just to have something on your resume, some experience to share in an interview to show that you've been able to manage your own workload and that you don't need an office to succeed. I think people put a lot of emphasis on that when they're going through the process. So being able to share that, yeah, I've done this before, I can do it. I can manage my own schedule. I can work from anywhere. I don't need the office. Just give me my tasks, let me do my work, and you'll see that I can succeed in that type of role. That will go a long way. But more than anything, just focus on the fact that you do have skills. If you're a banker in Tulsa, Oklahoma, then I promise you have a great set of skills that will work very well for you in Brazil, Japan, or Portugal. You absolutely have the skills, but you need to learn how to turn those into, transform those skills into something that people will understand when they look at them. So don't say I'm a banker in Tulsa. You say I've got great conflict resolution skills. I've got great financial analytics skills. I've built amazing spreadsheets. I've shown how to go through a change management system, changing from this to this, or lead people from a distance. So just think through a different lens. Think through what that remote team leader that's making the hire wants to get out of it, and then transition your skills into those needs. The other thing I can say is, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of outsourcing your weaknesses. So it's okay. It's a great time to get some help. This is an awesome opportunity to talk with a professional or take courses on how to become remote ready or to appear remote ready. We've had several remote job coaches on this show. Jordan Carroll is a friend of mine and the remote job coach out there, so I can highly recommend him. But there's several that you can go to and get some assistance. They have free content out there that you can do some reading and learn how to make yourself visually or digitally appealing to a company, and then also just getting those right interviewing skills, getting the right networking skills, and those experiences. So there's a lot that you can do, but the big thing I want to take away is to make sure that you are capable of working remote, and people want to hire people not just because they've worked remote. It's because of the experience that you bring into the company. So that would be my advice. Last little thing I'll say on that is, don't go into those interviews or writing those responses to those questions stating that you want to work there because you want to work remote. That is not why we want to hire people. Everybody likes remote work. You're not unique. So don't tell us that that's why you want to come work here. Tell us why you're a great fit for the role. We understand already that remote work is attractive to you. Don't make that the focal point of the case for you being hired. Awesome question, Stacy. Good luck. I hope you'll let me know how your journey goes. Simon in Australia, do you ever regret moving to Spain, and or would you pick another country if you could do it all over again? I do not regret moving to Spain, and I probably would pick another country if I was to do it over again. I don't know where that would be necessarily, but I picked Spain kind of on a whim because they had a visa that I could do at that time. And at that time, there were very few options. Now there's a lot more options. So if I started from today, I might pick another place, but I've loved Spain. Spain's been an amazing place to call home for the last 5 years. I don't regret it at all and would highly recommend Spain to anybody that was considering moving abroad, but there are lots of options. You have to find what works for you, like and it's not just about the language, and it's not just about the culture, and it's not just about the weather or the landscape or the city versus the country or the beach versus the mountains. These are all ingredients in the recipe, and you have to figure out how those ingredients mix together to create the right meal for you. So for me, Spain checked a lot of the boxes. It didn't check every box, but it checked a lot of those boxes and gave me the opportunity to learn a language that I actually wanted to learn. There's a lot of countries out there that I love, but I have zero desire to learn their language. And so for me, that's an important thing. It's a big checkbox for me. It also had a lot of diversity, mountain, sea, different languages, different cultures, access to other countries within Europe. These were all things that were important to me. Maybe they're not important to you. So, if I could do it all over again, especially having had the experience in Spain now, I got itchy feet. I'm ready to try something new. Yeah, maybe I would try something else, but I definitely do not regret Spain. Awesome country to live in. David in the U.S. Oh, I think it's David. David in the U.S. My wife and I are mid-career professionals planning to move overseas in less than 2 years, but it is incredibly difficult to find an expat-capable financial planner or investment manager professional to help us figure out what we need to do. Why is this so hard, and do you have any advice? David or David, whichever one I am, I apologize for getting it wrong if I did. Awesome question. He and I actually went back and forth a little bit on this one. And this was a really, really good question because it's a pain point that I felt too. Planning out your financial future with a professional, as I said earlier, like I'm a big fan of hiring professionals to do what I'm not good at. And so I have a financial planner back in the US, but he doesn't know anything about what financial planning should look like if I decide to stay in Spain for the rest of my life. He can just tell me what I should do in the US, the tax advantages of doing certain things, how much money I'm going to need, what percentage I should be putting away, what type of investments I should be doing. And so it's easy enough to just leave your investments back in your home country. That is what I think most people do, especially until you're like really going to settle into another place. But there is a stage where you get to, or when you just know, hey, I'm going to be in this new country for forever, where it makes sense to reevaluate that. And the sooner the better, I personally don't know what my future holds. So I have a lot of trouble in that space, but there's a lot of people who struggle with this, and it's true. There is not really a great service out there. Like I have Greenback Tax for my US taxes, but they're not a financial planning firm. I would highly recommend them for US expat taxes. But if you're looking for someone to say like, hey, I want to map out what my retirement looks like when I turn 65, but I'm from the US, I own a home in Guatemala, and I spend 8 months of the year in Portugal. I pay Social Security in all 3 countries. And I have a business entity located in Canada. Your situation changes dramatically. And this is very nuanced person to person. So the short answer is that's why it's so difficult, David. It's very challenging because every person's situation is so unique. And when you're coming from different countries and involving different tax systems, then you have a lot of situations where, like, for example, if anybody listened to the episode where we were talking about moving to Italy and how to live in Italy almost tax-free, one of the big caveats there was, do you pay Social Security in your home country or in Italy? If you have to pay Social Security in Italy, which that is like your retirement savings, which the government forces you to pay, it can be super expensive to live in Italy. If you don't have to pay that and you can pay it back in your home country, then it can be very affordable to live in Italy. But then what if you want to retire in Italy? Does your home country still give you that money? Does Italy require that you have money there in Italy to count it as retirement? What are the tax advantages of those things? Like, these are all very real problems, and there is no easy solution. So my two-part answer to this question is A, that is a big problem for a lot of people. And that's why, because it's so nuanced. And B, if you are out there and you want to solve this problem, I think you could make a ton of money because there are only going to be more and more people moving abroad, experiencing other parts of the world, sharing and splitting time between different countries. This is going to continue to become an even bigger challenge. And governments are starting to take it seriously because there's more of us. Before, they're like, whatever, you just go do what you do. If you spend 8 months a year here, as long as you're paying your taxes back there, as long as you're investing in retirement somewhere, if you got an IRA here or there, whatever, it's fine. But countries are going to start demanding that you invest those funds into their country if you want to stay there for a long term. And then what does that do to the process, to your plans for over a longer period of time? It's a big question. Great question. Thank you, David. Let's see here. D, nomading in Asia. I like it, D. No specific place, just nomading through Asia. So I'm a current full-time nomad, but am considering transitioning to a more permanent expat situation. What can you tell me about the different phases of your journey and anything I should consider as I make this change? I love this question. So I've gone through some different phases of my journey. I've been a full-time nomad. I've done the slow mad thing. I'm kind of in a slow mad stage right now, like very, very specifically right now. I've done the expat thing in a handful of different countries where I've stayed, 6 months, a year, 5 year, up to 5 years in multiple different places. So I've done a little bit of them all. And I think the biggest thing that I want to call out here is that if you're having that call to settle down, to kind of plant some roots down, that's okay. I think nomads struggle with this quite a bit. We've been addicted to the adrenaline rush of traveling and seeing the world and always being in a new place and meeting new people and all the new food and all the new languages and the challenges that come with that. We're kind of addicted to it. But there is a lot to be said for listening to your body and your mind and saying, okay, you know what? I don't really enjoy this as much as I used to. I'm ready to settle down. I'm ready to have a routine, to have some friends that I see on a consistent basis, to have my own stuff. So if you start feeling those things, first of all, you're not weird. You're not going to lose all your nomad friends. You're not transitioning. You don't have to mourn the loss of this person who's dying and going away. You are still you, and you're still going to have nomadic tendencies. You're probably going to go through a phase of transitioning into, okay, I got a home base, but I travel a lot from here. Or after 6 months, you're going to be super bored and you're going to say, okay, I got to go take a month-long trip and go somewhere. So it doesn't have to be binary, all or nothing, one or the other. You can do a bit of both. So that's my advice. I have found that I really enjoy looking at life as a book with a lot of different chapters. And I'm currently living in this chapter, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean the other chapters were bad decisions, or the ones that come later will be, drastically different or exactly the same as what I'm doing right now. I also really love the way we had David from Greenback Tax on the show, who's been traveling the world as a family for many years, but they're currently living, quote unquote, forever in Costa Rica. And he says, forever for us means 1 year. And I really like thinking about that. They think in 1 year terms. So a lot of good can come from making that transition. Listen to yourself. If that's what you feel like doing, do it, and settle down, and just know that you're not going to find, the world is a big place. When you settle down in one place, you are actively choosing to trade some of the experiences and some of the greatness of the variety in the world for the specific place. So if you've been used to spending a month on the Gold Coast in Australia during summer, and then skiing in the Swiss Alps in winter, and then going to your favorite music festival or food festival in New Orleans the next month. You are not going to get that amount of variety, but you are going to get a lot of depth of a specific place. So really settle into enjoying the depth. You might learn the new language a lot better than you did in other places. You'll have a stronger circle of friends. You'll have a better routine. Maybe your work life is going to improve. There's a lot of pros. So just enjoy the depth. Forget about the variety for a little bit, the breadth or the width in a way, but which can sometimes be kind of shallow and surface level, and think more about the excitement of digging deep on a specific place and really getting to know that place. That can be equally as exciting. Thank you, Dee. That was a really, really good question. Dan from Holland, planning to move to Portugal. Okay, so Dan is from Holland, but planning to move to Portugal. What are your thoughts on the rising costs of living due to expats and nomads? I've gone on some scouting trips and read the headlines, and the locals say the cost of living is becoming unbearable for them due to this. This being nomads, expats, people moving abroad and taking homes from the locals. Is this true, and what do we do about it? It's a fantastic question, Dan. There's two sides to this coin. One is that it's a very real thing. Gentrification is very real and happens all over the world, and in a lot of cities, with or without expats. Cost of living is a constantly transitioning thing, and wherever you go in the world right now, everybody is saying the exact same thing. Costs are going up. Living price is incredible. Inflation's through the roof, right? Everybody listening to this show right now would say the exact same thing about where they're living. Nobody is saying, oh, costs have kind of stabilized. Oh, no, actually, I'm making more effectively than I was last year. This is amazing. Everywhere I go, everyone I talk to around the world, everybody says the exact same thing in that regard. And this can be more true than in some places than it is in others. So that is worth acknowledging. And I think Lisbon is at the epicenter of this discussion. There are all the world macroeconomic things happening, which everybody's experiencing. And on top of that, Lisbon is getting bombarded with becoming the number one place in the world for expats to move to, super popular destination for foreigners. Airbnb has pushed the cost of living up. The government did not do a great job counterbalancing that, like they did in some cities, keeping Airbnb very limited. So there's a lot of factors at play here. If you really dig into the data, and there's some amazing people out there doing this, a friend of the show, Gonçalo Hall, someone, follow him, connect with him if you want to read more and see more about this. He's a Portuguese guy living in Madeira, from Lisbon. He can speak the local language. He would tell you it is completely overblown. We're talking about fractions of a point of a percentage here that the nomads and expats are actually having on the cost of living. There's so many factors at play here. And the other thing is that Europe is getting bombarded at super high rates by tourism right now, like higher than in the last 40 years. So you have this mix of, yes, Portugal's been very open to remote workers and digital nomads coming, living, staying. They've attracted them with all kinds of visa options, tax incentives, things like that. But we're talking about a very small percentage of the overall population when you talk about those the people that fit into that category. So the effect that they're having is actually much lower than what the headlines would have you believe. You have to really dig into the data to see that, but it's very easy to correlate those two things. All of that said, let's not overlook the fact that there is some truth to this. It is true, and it's up to us as people moving from abroad to another place to really take that into account. Recognize when you have buying power, and don't take advantage of it to a very strong degree. Don't look at buying power as the principal reason for why you want to move somewhere. There's a lot of places around the world where you could live. You don't have to go somewhere just because it's a little bit cheaper. Go there, love it, get into the culture, get to know people, learn the language, and don't just look at it as a way to save a little bit of money. And take this seriously. Do your part when you're there to contribute back to the economy, to invest in locals, and recognize that it's this can be a very real problem that has a very real effect on local people there. So, take it seriously, but also do your research and know what the situation is, and take it with a grain of salt when everybody tells you that the prices are outrageous. Literally everyone around the world is saying the exact same thing. So when your friend that moved to Portugal 10 years ago tells you, oh, you don't want to move to Portugal anymore, it's so expensive now. Yeah, well, tell that person to move back to Amsterdam and see what they say. See what everybody in Amsterdam's saying, because they'll tell you the exact same thing. Amsterdam's no longer affordable. I got to get out of here. So everybody's saying the same thing. That's my takeaway. All right, last question here. Tiara in Italy. Ooh, I'm going to Italy soon. I love the story you've touched on in some episodes about your van breaking down, but I've never heard you actually tell the whole story. Care to share? I am more than happy to share this story. I feel like I talk about the van life thing too much sometimes. So interesting to hear that question. I got a few similar ones, which is why we included this one in this Q&A. So I will address it. And for those of you that have heard this before, thank you for tuning in. You may tune out if you do not care. For those of you that do want to hear a bit of a comedy of errors, here you go. So my wife and I came to Spain years ago, 7, 8 years ago on a 3-month tourist visa, planned to bounce all around Europe. And, confluence of events, we ended up in the south of Spain. And we bought a camper van there. We had a 3-month tourist visa. So we said, we're going to buy a van. We're going to drive it up to the north of France, take a ferry over to Ireland and get out of the Schengen. So we had 3 months to do all that. Then we would reset our visa in Ireland. And then we'd pop back in on a ferry into mainland Europe or go over to Britain, drive around there, basically visa hop in a van for a while. We had an e-commerce shop that we were running, which was doing just enough to sustain that kind of lifestyle. And we thought, yeah, sure, that'll be great. Going back to my question earlier about the van, when I said go for functional, not cute. Well, that is speaking from experience. I went for cute, not functional, bought a 1986 gorgeous Volkswagen camper van from a surfer dude that liked to drive it about an hour and a half or two to the west there in Spain. Very nice police officer there in Malaga, Spain. But he liked to drive on over to Portugal. And that's basically all he used it for. And I said, I know what we'll do. We'll take that old van and we'll renovate it inside. Didn't care what was happening under the hood. And then we'll drive it across all of Europe. Genius idea. So that's what we did. We renovated it a little bit. We found a local guy there to help us put in some cabinets and update the kitchen and stuff like that. And we set off. We did a couple little test runs, ran around Andalusia some, had a blast with it for about a month. And then, and you guys might have heard my dog Coda shaking in the background there. We did all of this for him, by the way, because we didn't want to fly him around Europe. We wanted to bounce in and out, but we said we can't do that. We don't want to fly him anymore, so we're going to drive. Also, camper vanning around Europe doesn't suck. That'll be fun. But that was the initial thought was, well, we can't fly him, but we got to get in and out of the Schengen. What do we do? That was the best way we could do it. So that's what we did. Day one of our trip, after we've done our test runs for a couple weeks, we know that we're ready to go. We packed the van down. Literally day one, didn't make it 45 minutes up the road, the engine explodes. And that set off an entire series of events. Our 8-day trip that we had planned is about 22 hours of travel, I think, which we were going to stretch out over 8 days, which we thought was a lot of time because, we grew up in the US. We thought driving 15 hours in a day to get from point A to point B is what you do. So we thought, oh man, we got 8 days to go, 22 hours. We got all the time in the world. Turns out we needed like 41 days or something to get there by the time we dealt with 17 tow trucks. We broke down multiple times, all around Spain, all around France. We ended up in France at one point. This could have been another low point. We were at a French mechanic in the middle of nowhere, where the guy told us, you should kick shit in the river, were his exact words, I believe. So I called my insurance company and said, hey, what if we just drop this thing off at the dump because it just doesn't work? And you guys are spending a ton of money on tow trucks and stuff. Like, what if we just dropped it off? He said, oh, you get 500 euros, which was not enough for us to sustain our lifestyle. And obviously we would have been trapped there in the middle of nowhere in France. So we pushed forward. We ended up, to make a very long story short, we ended up having it towed. Even though that French mechanic fixed it, we said, no, we don't want to drive it anymore. Put it on a tow truck, drive us to the north of France, to the ferry. We drove it onto the ferry, got on the ferry, got off in Ireland. We had another tow truck waiting for us there who drove us across Ireland to Galway, Ireland, where we ended up spending 6 months licking our wounds, fixing the van up officially, and selling it there in Ireland. Our European camper van trip came to an end very, very quickly. It was somewhat traumatic, I have to say. Like, I still have fear of, breaking down in random places. I mean, we broke down in some pretty rough situations. We ended up sleeping in mechanic shops. At one point, I have a really funny memory of sitting on the car jack, like they had the car jacked up, the van jacked up in the mechanic shop, and we were sitting inside making lunch and playing cards while they were working on it underneath. And so, yeah, I mean, this was not like because we couldn't afford a hotel or something. It was because we would be in the middle of nowhere and there wasn't a hotel. Or we couldn't take our dog, a big wolf dog, husky, into the only option in that place. So there were a lot of things at play, and it was ultimately a really funny story to tell. We met some great friends out of it, literally lifelong friends, because we were trapped in certain places, people that we're still in touch with and hang out with to this day. We ended up sleeping for 3 or 4 days with a family in the south of Spain that we became very close with. They welcomed us into their home, fed us. We slept there. We got to be friends with them. We ended up getting to see some places that we otherwise wouldn't have seen. So there was a lot of fun and good that came from it, and easy to laugh at now. But in the moment, it was pretty rough, and so maybe the real low point was it broke down in a park, which I wasn't supposed to be in, but the GPS told me to turn left. I went left. Ended up in like a pedestrian park where there were like jogging trails and stuff. And then the van broke down there. And I had to somehow figure out, with no cell phone service, how to get a tow truck to come pick us up in this park where the tow truck wasn't even supposed to be, in a language that I didn't speak. So it was that kind of thing. And yeah, that's the full story. I didn't realize I had never really told the full story. I hope that answers it for you there. But yeah, what a journey. I'm on camper van number 2. So I came back for more. So I guess be resilient is the message. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. You can laugh at my misery all you want. It was fun to reflect on. Thank you all for the questions. Again, I really want to know if you guys like this format, if you want to hear more of these. If so, you can just shoot me an email, chase@aboutabroad.com. You can contact me on any of my social accounts. There's a contact form on aboutabroad.com. All of the links to those will be in the show notes. So you can go there and send in your questions, write in and say, hey, this was fun. This was terrible. Don't do that again. Bring on more guests. We don't want to hear you. We want to hear other people. Whatever you think, I want to know. But for me, this was a lot of fun. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Hope you guys did as well. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the 2 following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.